if you imagine sending a digital twin out into the world on your behalf, you would want it to remember everything about you, all of your interests. You would want it to be a very nice, pleasant, and patient being. So you basically, the design of our digital avatars and twins is going to be a moral, we're going to be making moral choices about how they behave in the world.
Welcome to Closer to Truth. We are pleased to partner with MindFest 2025, led by Professor Susan Schneider, on this year's theme, Sentience, Autonomy, and the Future of Human-AI Interaction. Closer to Truth is conducting a series of in-depth discussions with keynoters and participants. I'm speaking today with James Hughes, a bioethicist and sociologist who is Associate Provost at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. James is the executive director and co-founder of the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies, a nonprofit think tank which promotes ideas about how technological progress can increase freedom, happiness, and human flourishing in democratic societies. James, that's a big agenda. It's great to meet.
Yeah. Well, we've always pretended to be a little Brookings Institution in our head.
Well, that's great. We're going to get into each of those elements, but let's begin with your MindFest talk on Buddhist thoughts on AI and BCI challenges to identity. Now, Buddhist thought famously denies the self, and BCI, brain-computer interface, you have challenging personal identity. So both are heading in the same direction. Please summarize the assumptions you're making and the arguments that you give, and how these two articulate.
Well, brain-computer interfaces is a project that we're working on at our center for this year with a postdoc, and we're writing white papers about it. And we have, from the beginning, had the view that brain-computer interface questions are largely the questions of the exocortex as well. So by exocortex, we mean the set of electronic affordances that we use to record our memories, to communicate with the world, that are becoming part of the extended mind perspective of the brain. So that's where we start, that the extended mind is really where to start thinking about BCI questions, because what's going to happen with BCIs, brain-computer interfaces, when they become implanted, is that many of the kinds of things that they will be able to do are things that we already can do with our digital tools. There are some things that it will be able to do that are different as well, such as control different parts of the brain. But so that's where we start. And then this particular talk, my postdoc went to ChatGPT a couple months ago, and he asked it what ChatGPT thought my opinion would be on blockchain. And I'd never written about blockchain. But ChatGPT basically did an assessment of my views and where they fit with everybody else's views who'd written about blockchain, and gave a very thoughtful response about what I should think about blockchain that I found convincing and surprising, because my knee-jerk reaction to those questions about blockchain had been that, I didn't like cryptocurrencies, and so I didn't like blockchain either, that they seem to go together in my mind. But being kind of chastised and educated about my own views by ChatGPT was quite interesting experience. And that comes at the same time that a lot of research is beginning to show that our reliance on digital tools cause what's called cognitive offloading, that we begin to atrophy in some of the cognitive skills that we would otherwise have used. And so thinking about these things in parallel, I began to realize and wanted to give a talk about the way that Buddhists understand the self, that the self is a constant and ongoing self-creation, a self-fiction that we write for ourselves. There's no true authentic self. So there's nothing truly, from a Buddhist perspective, there's nothing necessarily that has to be in one box of the self versus another. And if we accept the idea that these digital tools are an extended part of the self, having a self that includes them is not necessarily a violation of some kind of naturalness of the organic brain being the center of everything. So from that perspective, I'm trying to argue about how that kind of view would impact our understanding of things like liability. How is it different to have to have a notebook that you write down your numbers in, and so that you don't have to remember them in your brain, versus having an LLM that is a product that is inscrutable and sold to you by a corporation and that may have corporate motivations and all those kinds of things. So thinking about how we can be critical about this growing armamentum of digital tools, what kinds of challenges to personal happiness they portend, but also taking it back to literacy. I mean, we have made the argument frequently that the beginning of our cyborgization was with literacy. That's when we figured out how to download the contents of the brain into external storage media and upload them again later. And Socrates famously complained that young people were no longer able to memorize things the way they used to because they had figured out how to read and write. And he was right about that. But today, we wouldn't consider someone a truly educated or intelligent person if they hadn't read a book or if they were completely illiterate. I mean, there are different kinds of intelligence for people who are illiterate, and that's worth exploring as well. But our modern understanding of what intellectual virtue is that you should read a lot, and you don't have to memorize everything. But you should at least know what the important questions are, where those kinds of facts can be found when you need to find them. And so, from that perspective, I talk also about the Buddhist view of how to live your life for a flourishing life, which the term is used kusala, which means skillful, how to skillfully approach your life. So it's not a condemnation of our reliance on digital tools, but how to skillfully incorporate them into our life in ways that support our flourishing.
Your Buddhism, I think I read that you were temporarily ordained a Buddhist monk. I don't know if that's true, but that would be interesting. Yeah, okay. It seems to be a secular Buddhism, which I assume means that you accept some of the sort of psychological principles that Buddhism has, but not all of the traditional beliefs and doctrines that are metaphysical or spiritual or otherworldly.
Yeah, most critically, reincarnation is the sticking point for many of us Western Buddhists. There's many other superstitious elements to Buddhism as a religion. And I lived in Sri Lanka for 2 years and ordained briefly as a monk there, and then also studied Zen in Japan. And I've studied with Tibetans and Koreans and all kinds of folks. And there are cultural elements that have accreted to Buddhism that I think you can rightly say are not essential to the core message that might be distilled from all these different traditions. And there's a strong and important debate about whether you can legitimately call yourself a Buddhist if you don't believe in reincarnation. But I do call myself a Buddhist because the meditation practices, the metaphysics of Buddhism are still extremely important to me and something that I think about on a daily basis. So
are they metaphysics or really psychological states?
Well, there's the Abhidhamma, which is the third part of the Buddhist scriptures, is this enormous set of psychological theories and models. So there are psychological states that are described there, but there's also the intrinsic philosophy that led to various schools of Buddhism about the nature of reality. And whether we create, how much of reality we create with our own mind. And some go to a purely idealist place with that, and others are less idealist. I'm a less idealist. I think there is a reality out there, but that it's important to constantly remind ourselves that we are putting the words and the terms and the concepts on that reality, that it could be perceived in many different ways.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. Let's go back to the brain-computer interface, where you well articulate how it's changing our methodologies of working. Students don't do very much handwriting anymore. Their handwriting is poor. They don't have that experience, but obviously have access. My granddaughters could swipe an iPhone before they could even talk. So yeah, obviously it's a different mentality, different way of thinking. But does that change the personal identity in a metaphysical sense, the way Buddhism would have it, with a denial of the self, a Humean approach to the self?
Well, this is where thinking about digital agents in the way that people are talking about them here would begin to challenge things in ways that we aren't currently challenged. Currently, we're challenged by not overly relying on a writing tool or a thinking tool in ways that would cause our skills to atrophy, but that's not a real challenge to the nature of the self.
Right.
But having digital avatars out there that may be part of your team. They may not necessarily have your face and voice, but there may be one for work and one for managing your family life, a nanny bot out there or something like that. That's the one step. And then having a digital doppelganger, a digital twin of yourself would be another. And of course, that would be the most challenging for the sense of self. And if you imagine sending a digital twin out into the world on your behalf, you would want it to remember everything about you, all of your interests. You would want it to be a very nice, pleasant, and patient being. So basically the design of our digital avatars and twins is going to be we're going to be making moral choices about how they behave in the world. And generally, I think they will be nicer people than us. Some of our relatives may prefer them. And if you've been watching Severance, there's this theme now in Severance of the innies are free of some of the karmic baggage that their outies have, and you could fall in love with the innie and not be at all interested in the outie. So I think there will be some challenges along those lines. And then when you die, those digital agents will be part of your digital effects. That just as you can contact Facebook, if your parent dies, you can contact Facebook and say they're dead, and they'll put up a notice of their death and maintain it as a memorial site for a while. Or you can give them, your family members, permission to manage your Facebook page after your death and manage it as a memorial site. So we may be giving our digital agents to our children. They already are trying to build them. People are trying to build digital death bots of their parents. But I think it'd be better if this was done as a consensual process. And that digital agent then will be an extension of your personhood, your selfhood into the future. And this is very troubling to people. But again, from the perspective of Buddhism, which argues that remembrance of death is extremely important, and East Asian societies have ritualized annual remembrances of parents. They have little shrines in their home. So from that perspective, the kind of ritual, dealing with the death bot as a ritual remembrance of the dead doesn't seem to be particularly troubling to me.
Good. James, let's do some short questions and very short answers to some AI-related questions very quickly. So the first question, can AI ever be conscious as we are conscious? 0 to 100, 0 meaning impossible, 100 meaning it will happen for sure.
I'm about 90 on that because I think it's clear that machine consciousness will exceed human consciousness in many ways and fall short in others, that it'll be in a different part of the space of all possible minds. But I'm pretty sure that it will be able to achieve everything humans do in some short order.
Question 2, is virtual immortality possible, which means uploading your first-person consciousness, not a clone, not a digital clone, but actually you and your feeling of you, 0 to 100?
I think it will eventually be possible, but following the Kurzweilian model of how this might happen with a bunch of nanobots in your brain that are recording your experience and your memories dynamically, I think it's pretty still far off, at least 50, 100, 150 years, something like that.
Well, hopefully humanity has a lot more than that. So I'd be talking about, 100,000 years. Because the question is, in principle, is it possible?
Yes, and I would give it about 90.
Okay. 3, will AI generate very unpleasant surprises for humanity, 0 to 100?
Oh, that would give 100, yes. There are always unintended consequences, and we should be trying to anticipate them and mitigate their risks.
4, the ultimate human future is transhumanism, humans melding with AI, 0 to 100.
I would say yes, 100, but because we are already melded with technology. We've been co-evolving with technology since we mastered fire. That was what allowed our neocortexes to grow. And then with literacy, as I mentioned, and we're not the same human beings that we were 10,000 years ago.
Final question. The ultimate future is non-human, all AI, no humans, 0 to 100.
If by that we mean that no one will carry human DNA or walk around in human bodies, I don't think that that's a likely future. I think there'll still be people who identify as humans in the future. That will be part of their lineage, just as we have genealogies where people identify with their distant German ancestors, even though it was 10 generations ago.
And so 0 to 100, where are you?
0 to 100, that there will be people who there are no more humans around. I think that's a low probability event. I put that about 30.
Okay, great. Many thanks, James. Viewers can watch more MindFest 2025 videos on the Closer to Truth website and YouTube channel. Also, over 1,500 videos and 100 TV episodes on consciousness, all facets, including Buddhist, Indian, Hindu philosophies about consciousness and cosmic consciousness, all infused, of course, with Closer to Truth's critical thinking. Thanks for watching. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like and comment below. You can support Closer to Truth by subscribing. Closer to Truth is now accepting your tax-exempt donations. Please come to closertotruth.com/donate. Thank you very much for supporting us, and thanks for watching.